a song for you.
You're listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I will do one episode for each song the band recorded in the studio. However, this is a fan podcast and not band endorsed. It's more of a tribute to their long history, well beyond just the hits, and my way of giving something back to a band that has given so much to me. Let's dig in! Hello and welcome to another episode of Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. We are in season 11 covering the songs of Come Taste the Band, and today I have not one, but two, I know it's unprecedented, guests helping me cover this awesome song. You guys know him as Nate. I also know him as Nate. He is from the original Deep Purple podcast. Nate, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. That's a nice salute, by the way.
Yes.
And coming
narrate
to us,
that for the audio listeners.
Well, I have to because there's no video show. I don't wait to get kicked off YouTube like you guys do.
Yeah, like I do every week.
And coming to us all the way from England late at night, Simon Ford. Simon, how are you?
Good evening, Scott. I'm fine. Hello, Nate. Good
Hello,
to see
Simon.
You both.
It's exciting. We've been talking for years, so it's exciting to, quote, meet you. And even though we've met, but never face to face over video like this, so it's cool.
And I think you've been on some of the live streams for the Deep Purple podcast, haven't you?
I haven't actually. I'm a bit slow on Discord, to be honest. No, I haven't negotiated that hurdle yet. I do listen to them, though. I do listen to them.
So, Simon, you've been a fan of Deep Purple for a while. What got you started on your journey with the band?
Well, it was 1980, Scott, and I heard the 24 Karat Purple compilation, and I was trying to imitate Ian Gillan in my first job, doing the not Child in Time. No, that's too scary. That's a Strange Kind of Woman.
Right,
the guitar interplay.
Mm-hmm.
Going down to my tea break, and all that sort of stuff. But so 24 Karat, and then it was Deepest Purple. They were my two big albums, and of course I got into Mark III from there.
Okay. Yeah, 24 Karat Purple was a very important album for me as well, because that was one of the first ones that I got. It was something, I think it was like in the discount bin at our local record store, and they didn't have a lot of the other albums, or they were just, outpricing what I could afford at the moment. So the compilation albums were a great way to experience a band. And I think that was the first one I got. I don't think I got Deepest Purple for a little ways down the road, but 24 Karat Purple certainly was very important one for me. That and Purple Passages, I think, because I got that before I found the Tetragrammaton versions of the albums.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So, Nate, I want to ask you, so we're going to get into the song Getting Tighter. I know that's one of your favorites, but what is it about that song that you wanted to come back and torture yourself as a guest on the show again?
Hardly torture to talk about great songs. But yeah, it's interesting. I never really got too many of the compilation albums, but for other bands I did. But for Deep Purple, I more got into it in the albums. However, this track I must have heard it first on the Tommy Bolin box set, the Ultimate, which is back there somewhere. Assuming that it's on it, I'm pretty sure it is. That must have been the first time I heard it, because I just remember there being a long period of time where trying to find Come Taste the Band was like a difficult one to find around here in the States. Yeah. So you was going to record stores rather, going to online companies where you'd mail them a check and they'd mail you the album, stuff like that. And it would be prohibitively expensive. It was very rare, but I finally found a copy of it, and then I just loved the whole album. But to me, it was this great kind of snapshot of what Deep Purple would have been had it been, say, a 4-piece with Glenn Hughes as the lead singer. And while I'm super glad they had Coverdale in the band, because like you've talked about a million times, like we've always talked about, love the interplay between those two singers, I thought it was really cool to hear, and it was great of Coverdale to just be able to allow Glenn to sing a song and be good with it. But yeah, I just love the energy of this song, and it rocks really hard. It's a great Tommy Bolin sort of riff, and yeah, just love it.
It's interesting because you were, I don't know, you would have been in Connecticut maybe at the time?
Rhode Island.
Oh, Rhode Island. Okay. And in Detroit, it was the same thing. I mean, Come Taste the Band was not available. I didn't hear any of those songs until I got a copy of the Anthology, which was a 2 LP compilation album that had some rarities like Hallelujah and Freedom. And that was my first taste of Come Taste the Band. And it was You Keep on Moving that was on there. Mm-hmm. And an excellent song. But once I kind of did the same thing, had to send away for the album. Once I got it, I was so glad I did. Simon, I would imagine availability of more obscure Deep Purple albums in England is not so difficult.
That's correct. Yeah, it's in great collectors' shops, and I had a friend Chris O'Connor. He's got an internet radio station, but he is a big bowling fan, and he had Tommy's solo albums. He had Come Taste the Band, and of course the Tommy Bowling box set which Nate mentioned, and I just take the lid off that and just look at the pictures, and that's probably where I first heard Getting Tighter, without a doubt.
Well, yeah, I just grabbed my copy off the shelf here, and yeah, it's Getting Tighter, O to G, You Keep on Moving.
Some great choices for sure. And as a side note, I'll just say again, in case you're listening, Roger, even though you guys are already recording the album, if you ended the new album with You Keep on Moving, I think that would be a fitting ending. I should just add that into every episode, assuming that he's going to hear it.
You're never going to let go of this pipe dream.
No, that, and I'm pretty sure that Rod Evans is the guy in the spacesuit. I'm just waiting.
Those are the two that you're hanging on to.
But speaking of hanging on to things, you guys know I'm collecting all the Purple Records issued Deep Purple vinyls. And I did come across 145 that I didn't know about, so I have to get that. But then I made the mistake of just double checking Discogs to make sure I had everything. And I found out that there is a 9 LP Purple Records issue of Made in Japan. It's all 3 full concerts. It was done in 2010. And man, that one's going to be painful to buy.
Yeah. Discogs will always remind you of new ways you can waste your money.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's a great resource, especially if you didn't anticipate on spending any money to go, oh, but I better grab that while I can. There's only 17 copies available.
Yes. I might have to pay $1 more if it becomes more rare.
Exactly. Or the shipping on this one is 17 cents less than that one. I better get it now before it goes up. It's it's a dangerous treasure trove of items, I will say. But let's get into the song Getting Tighter. As we're recording this, I actually just finished recording all the episodes for Perpendicular yesterday. So doing 2 shows a day, I'm way ahead. But it's going to be nice to revisit Come Taste the Band because it's such a great album, and I'm looking forward to getting into this track. So you guys ready to jump in?
Yes, please.
I'm not, because before we do, I want to play something else. I've got a little interview with Glenn Hughes.
Getting Tighter was written in my home in Beverly Hills when Tommy was living with me. We had the good fortune one night that Tommy came up with that riff, and I completed the lyric with Tommy in my house. It was the only time we ever got away from the others to write a song. In hindsight, Tommy wanted to write more songs with me for the album, but it was becoming more of a band album, which was a good thing.
Was it? I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, overall, I think it's an interesting album because Glenn wasn't there for all of it, but they compensated, I think, very well. You know, Tommy Bolin jumping in on some vocals. I think, didn't he play bass on one of the songs too?
That's correct. On Coming Home.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. So, I mean, it's like they still got the job done despite the issues. They made a great sounding album. I mean, the production on the album, I think, is fantastic. It's rich and full. And it's like you had Burn, which was a rich and full album, Stormbringer, which sounded like it was recorded in the corner of a studio, and then you get Come Taste the Band, which is back to being like a huge lush sounding album.
Which is funny though, because it was recorded in the same studio as Stormbringer.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I don't know what the I personally don't have the production issues with it that you do after listening to your Stormbringer episodes or your song issues. But yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, but I don't think it bothers me as much. But it is interesting that you could get, the same band essentially minus one player, same producer, same studio, and different sounds like that.
Yeah, I heard stories that from Ian Gillan and a couple other people on Born Again that somebody just forgot to turn the compressor on or whatever it was when they were doing the master to send to the record company. And I just feel like Stormbringer, like somebody forgot to turn the reverb on the album, and that's why it sounds so particularly dry. But it's just such a departure in sound from the rest of theirs that it's kind of shocking. I mean, it doesn't stop me from enjoying listening to it, but it just sounds so different in their catalog, kind of the way that Rapture of the Deep did until, we get this new version that I'm really looking forward to.
I had heard for Born Again, it was that something like the tweeters and the speakers were completely blown out and they didn't realize, which I don't know how you blow a tweeter, but and that resulted in it having like a much like hissier, like high end than they wanted because they couldn't hear that in the mix. Although cocaine may have also played a large part in why that album had issues that it did.
If I had to put blown tweeter and cocaine use on a scale of what was the likely reason that the album sounds the way it does, I think cocaine holds a little more weight than a blown tweeter.
And both would be even worse.
That's very true. Simon, are you a fan of the Born Again album? Is that one that you enjoy?
I'm waiting for the remix. I've got one or two songs from Born Again on compilations, but I'm hanging back basically. I've heard The Fallen, which I think came from a different tape source, which was on, I think, an anniversary set with the Reading gig or part of it on there. So, but I'm waiting for the bells and whistles remix.
Yeah,
and I want to hear Bill Ward because Bill's drumming is just buried, really.
Yeah, it really
Except
is.
for the hi-hat.
Right.
Yeah. That's all you can hear. But it's I'm not usually a huge into remaster remix, but this one is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. I checked a couple of days ago, and both the Black Sabbath website and the Tony Iommi official website are notoriously 3 years old. There's just like no updates to them whatsoever. But in an interview, Tony said they have the masters. That one's next. So maybe once they get past this final concert with Ozzy and get all of that stuff done, he'll get back in the studio and finish it up. And then it comes down to, the production side of things, which will probably take a couple of months. But hopefully we'll get an announcement at least that they're working on it or it's nearly finished. So
yeah,
fingers crossed. But I just want to hear what they really played. I want to know what more I can appreciate in that album that I haven't already enjoyed. And it's going to be hard because I think, like Stormbringer, if they were to fix the issue that I have with, like if somebody were to go in there and put some reverb in there and liven it up a little bit, and I'm wondering how I'm going to feel about Rapture of the Deep, is the original album still going to be the one I go back to because that has the character that I'm used to hearing those sounds with? So I'm going to be curious to see how I feel, and after I hear it, what my next listen is.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Well, we're not here to talk about Black Sabbath. We are here to talk about Getting Tighter. Here it is by Deep Purple. Speaking of hi-hats, they are nice up and high in the mix. Simon, what are your thoughts on the intro?
I was ready to funk out there immediately. Was a tambourine in there, Scott? Because
I do think there is a tambourine layered in there. Yes.
Yeah, because you mentioned this before. They always use the tambourine very well, very subtly. You know, it's not over dominant, but I presume Pacey plays it, being the percussionist.
I would think so. Yeah.
I love the intro. I love the intro. It grabs you immediately.
What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love the everyone coming in there together, but then going to just that guitar riff, for lack of a better term. I like that what he's playing isn't identical through each playthrough. He's he's doing those little pull-offs and hammer-ons, and then of course you just got to the very end with Glenn's bass intro, which is do 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 boom 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 boom. It was just like the greatest little funk piece thrown in there. Yeah, just great.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that Glenn plays, and I don't know if he intentionally picks certain notes harder or maybe he plucks them so that they cut through, but there's some notes of his that just are so much louder than everything else he's playing. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, they just really cut through the mix more than other notes that he's playing. So I don't know if that's just part of his natural style or intentional, but I always find it interesting when they do that because they seem to fit very well.
I think he's really good at finding the space where he knows there isn't going to be anything and filling it with he's very good on the upbeats,
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. And then in is it Holy Man, where he goes, where it's that little the boom bump, boom bump. That's that little chromatic thing he does where normally there wouldn't be anything there, but he tends to just I think you said, I think it's partially the dynamics of what he's playing, but he's accenting those upbeats.
I saw a clip of an interview with Kirk Hammett this morning talking about Cliff Burton and talking about how Cliff was really into harmonies and Kirk was not. He just I just know how to play my line. He goes, I don't know how to do these harmonies. So they showed they would write out all the notes, and then underneath of that, Cliff would write out the harmony notes. But I was looking at them and that's not just adding a third to everything to make it a harmony. He's actually doing some really interesting dynamics within those harmonies. And I feel like Glenn is very much like that. He just finds these interesting notes to play that no one else would pick, and they work really well.
Right. He's not doing every upbeat. And in Metallica, they're not sticking to a fixed harmony. It's, they're playing things that are operating harmonically together, but this note might be a third, this note might be a fifth. It's constantly changing, which makes it interesting.
Absolutely. Let's get back to the song because we've only just begun. I love the harmonies that Tommy's playing, even just on guitar. That sounds so good. And I like the way Glenn is accenting him instead of playing just eighths or sixteenths or some kind of straight bass line. The combination of the way those two played together was so brilliant. It kind of bums me out we never got more. What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, totally. It was a very, very brief period, but I love what he's doing with the harmonies there, and where he's got an effect that I always really like, which is just dominant. In this particular instance, the dominant lower note, and then a accented, much lower in the mix, higher note playing harmony in the background. It's just a really, really cool effect.
And it flows really nicely from the intro into this part too. I always enjoy the way they transition because it seems like such a natural thing, almost like the song was just meant to be this way. Simon, what are your thoughts?
I think Glenn puts his whole body into, when you see Glenn play Getting Tighter on stage, it's very captivating. So must have been great to have been in the studio to see him knuckling down to that groove.
I would agree with that. And I think too that I like that he's the one that sang this song. I think I have a hard time hearing in my head David doing it. Maybe it's because the vocal's a little bit higher and a little bit different energy than he normally sings with. But I can't in my brain wrap my head around David singing this song. Can you, Simon?
No, I mean obviously during the rehearsals, there were David came in with the dance to the rock and roll refrain, but obviously but it's by the time he got to on stage, David was presumably backstage entertaining whoever was.
Whoever to let him.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. What about you, Nate? Could you envision that?
Only if the song was about sex. I mean, that's the only opportunity that Coverdale would have to sing it. I can't imagine him singing about, which presumably just kind of about music.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, the title would be open for interpretation. Certainly, I'm sure David could twist that into something a little bit sexual, but fortunately, he had Whitesnake for that.
Yes. Well, I think that they were accused of this being a drug song, and I think I read it in Glenn's autobiography. Getting tighter meant, getting high or whatever, and he was. And Glenn insists he was just talking about the band, and he's like, hey, I did a ton of drugs. Like, I'm not saying I didn't, but I didn't like to put any drug references really in my songs. It wasn't something that I was like boasting about. So,
right.
So he's, which is, the same thing with like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, where, people are like, yeah, right. It wasn't about some drawing that a kid gave your son or whatever. And the Beatles are like, well, they tell about 100 stories about songs that are about drugs and things they did when they were on drugs and taking acid and almost jumping off the roof of Abbey Road. Like, why would they just not own up to the song being right, about drugs if it was, Well, the drugs probably helped the lyric writing process, but same thing with this. I don't think it's about drugs. It just appears to be kind of a generic song lyrically about playing in a band, being in a band, touring, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'm just glad they got Julian some help. I mean, obviously it worked out for him. And,
yes.
But I mean, if you think of it, wouldn't you just kind of expect that you have somebody who's known as one of the most creative artists of all history, that his son would maybe be creative as well and tell wild stories and come up with, just bizarre concepts out of the blue? I mean, children tend to do that anyway. But the child of somebody who's known for their creativity and bizarreness, why wouldn't you think that would be, a thing?
Exactly.
Very strange. I love the little bits that we're getting from Tommy on an additional track. He's very much playing in a similar fashion to the style that Richie would play in, where we would get these little fill-ins in between the vocals from Richie and keeping with the tradition of Deep Purple, but he's really doing it in his own way because it's completely different. It's not soloish, which is how Richie would typically play, but he's still giving us those little colors and making the song interesting, on top of this wonderful dynamic that we're getting between John and Glenn, who are playing this wonderful back and forth rhythm together. Simon, what are your thoughts on this part?
Well, I was hearing some shakers from Ian Pace. So we've got tambourine and shakers, Scott.
Mm-hmm. It's awesome.
Or was it just the audio feed, which is playing with my ears? I don't know.
No, I think they're both there.
And I think you're right, and I never really thought about it before, but yeah, I think it's there.
Going through these songs one at a time, and for the first time really doing critical listens, it's amazing how much this band has used shakers and tambourines in their songs. I never thought of those growing up as rock instruments, but they certainly have been a big part of Deep Purple's sound overall. Yeah.
Yep.
What do you think of this section, Nate?
It's great. I mean, I like how Hughes is just kind of belting out the vocals on this section. Really, it's it shows his power vocally, and it doesn't get into so much on the albums. Some of the vocal things that he does that tend to grate on people that aren't Glenn Hughes fans, or aren't fans maybe of what he does vocally. And I know, all the all the complaints that I've heard over the years over what he's doing vocally, which I understand. I mean, I love the guy and I love what he does, but I understand how that's not for everybody. But he's restrained on this, despite singing incredibly. He's restrained in a way that you generally don't hear him live.
Are you talking about the way he enunciates some of the words, or is it sounds that he's throwing in? What like are people...
all the flourishes and the grace notes and
okay,
all that sort of stuff. Like he's not doing a lot of that stuff. He's just he's singing it like a funky hard rock singer, not so much R&B as he tends to do.
Oh, so like he's trying to make every song Georgia on My Mind.
Yes.
Does that kind of stuff ruin the experience for you, Simon? Do you kind of lose the song a little bit when you hear those things thrown in?
Sometimes, yes. I think Glenn calls it his skanky vocals. Sometimes it gets too. It can get a bit overbearing, but I'll roll with it basically. But I always said this track, I think Glenn's on point vocally, and as a song, I think if you played it to a non-Deep Purple fan, it would get people's toes tapping, and they'd say, "Oh, who's this, by the way?" It would bring people in. And we haven't even got to the middle section yet, so...
That's true. If you were to say, give me 5 Deep Purple songs to listen to learn how this band is, this would be a good one to choose, because you're right. It does move. It's a good toe tapper. It shows the power of the band. There's nothing that's extremely crazy in the song. It's a good rock and roll tune. So yeah, I would agree with that. Definitely.
And it's a good one to play for people that don't know, or just know Deep Purple by the few songs they've heard on the radio. Just anything off of really Stormbringer and Come Taste the Band kind of blows people's minds, because they just don't think of Deep Purple this way.
Yeah, I tend to think, if someone were to ask me, like, give me 5 songs, the first thing that would come to my mind is Nothing on Machine Head. They've probably heard it. Or, like I would go to any other album probably other than Machine Head. But yeah, this would be a good one to pick. As far as Glenn goes, for me personally, there's really not much he does in the studio that gets me. Every once in a while, he'll pronounce something a little bit weird, or he'll put that, that little bit of growl into a word that might seem off. But it's more live, like when he starts doing the whoop and that's where I'm like, okay, just calm down. I get that you're excited and all that, but just kind of calm down a little.
Like you're talking about like the phase, like like his kind of drug phase during this era where he's going whoop.
Yeah.
Whoop. He's doing that. Yeah, that's a little much. He doesn't do that anymore, thankfully.
Yeah. He's much more straightforward now. But yeah, that kind of stuff I think would be a little much, because it really is more, hey, look at me, than I'm here in a band. And I understand, you're in front of a crowd, you're in the moment, you've got all this adrenaline going through you, and whatever other substances, and I get why it happens, but I just mean from the listener side, I'm like, okay, just go get a glass of water and come back. We'll cover you. Don't worry, it's going to be okay. So that, but I mean, every once in a while he'll just be singing a word, and then he'll throw a little stank on it, like everything's fine, And it just like sometimes that is a little bit, it just throws me out of the song just a little bit, but I recover quickly from that. But other than that, I think he's a great singer. He's blessed with such an amazing voice. And the fact that he still sounds so damn good today is unbelievable.
It's mind-boggling that he can still, in some ways, he sounds better now at in his mid 70s or it's gonna be 75 this year or something like that. Wow, like his voice, it's so clean, and it doesn't even show any signs of like, oh, he's starting to slip a little, with the signs that most people would start showing maybe in their 40s and 50s. He's in his 70s and hasn't even gotten there yet. It's crazy.
And I don't know if that's just because he's never really stopped. He doesn't, he doesn't stop at all. When he's done with one project, he's hopping on another, or writing a solo album, or trying to find people to play with. Like, he is constantly working. So I think his voice just doesn't have a chance to settle down, which is probably the healthiest thing you can do.
I was going to say, Scott, I think he had a period after Play Me Out where he was missing in action, really. So I think maybe not going out and thraping his voice in the clubs has probably been very helpful to him.
Yeah, there was a good 10-year stretch where he was not playing as much. And I mean, for as much as he abused drugs and everything, he was also never a smoker. And I think that, unfortunately, with Coverdale and Gillan, I mean, Coverdale has unfortunately kind of lost everything at this point and can't perform for various things. And Gillan obviously does an incredible job for a man who's going to turn 80 in a matter of weeks as of recording this. But at the same time, the 50 years or 60 years of smoking took their toll, and it just, unfortunately, it's very destructive to your health.
Very true. Very true. Well, let's get back to the song, because we have some fun stuff coming up here. I'm having a hard time tracking exactly where Tommy is, because I'm hearing during the verse, I'm hearing him in my right ear, and you guys might not be able to hear the separation through the Zoom feed, but I'm hearing him playing in the verse in my right ear. Then he's playing those, additional color parts kind of in the center. But then when the chorus comes up, there's a whole nother guitar track that creeps into my right ear where John is. It's really weird the way they panned this. Nate, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's kind of, he's playing kind of a straightforward track and then doing a second track of the harmonies and just the different flourishes and the traditional Tommy Bolin. He's always got that going on. So he's got those, which is kind of cool. You lay down like that rhythm track, and then you just take this track and say, I'm just going to kind of improvise over it. For all we know, he's playing twice as much on that improvised track, and maybe they're just cutting out all the ones that they don't want, or just they've selected a few that, we're going to put this one in, we're going to put that one in. But yeah, it sounds great, and it keeps the song really interesting. It doesn't sound like they're just singing over a loop. It sounds like there's a real band changing things up in the background.
There was, I don't remember which song or even which album it was, but there was a video of Deep Purple recording in the studio, and Bob Ezrin said to Ian Pace, he goes, okay, you've got your safety take. Now I want to just go for it. Just like whatever you want to do, just go. Because they splice everything together now. It's pick and choose the best piece of fruit and put it on that plate, Back then you couldn't do that as much, but you would have to just like mute out anything you didn't want. and keep what you did. So it was a little bit of work for the engineer, but yeah, that very well could have happened. Simon, how do you like the arrangement of this?
I think it hangs together really well. Tommy's extra slide bits there. I mean, I think Martin Birch, he wasn't slapdash, but sometimes you listen to it, you think, oh, he could have been tighter on that. There's a looseness in Tommy's playing, but it just seems to add to, and the production as well. It just seems to add to the track. Whereas perhaps nowadays we'd have been just cut and pasting, and it'd have been too perfect.
Yeah, that's something that really does get to me about today's recordings. And I mean, sometimes it's so similar that you can't tell which album a song came from. Whereas, you look at the 70s, well, that was definitely on In Rock. That was definitely on Fireball. And you can just tell by the sound of the song. And I listened to, say, like the last couple of Uriah Heep albums, or even the last, aside from Turning to Crime and maybe Equals One, but you take like Whoosh, Infinite, sound wise, those albums are interchangeable.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times they probably had their template, in their audio workstation, and then just say, "Oh, we'll just fire up the template. We got all the, the emulator, the room sounds, all that sort of stuff." Not to say that they're that cut and paste for Deep Purple, but a lot of other bands would probably just do that. They're just working off of a template, and they've got their set presets that they like. And back in the the days that this was recorded, you'd have knobs, and it would be very easy. Another band would come in and turn the knobs a different way, and then you'd come back in and you'd have to turn them back. Now you just say, load up the exact settings from that last recording, and you've got it all right there.
That actually happened to me when I was doing a live show in Vegas as an audio engineer. It was a play. And on Sunday morning, there would be a church service there. And then we would come in and do the, after the church service, we would do another, like a matinee of the play. And I walked in and they had completely changed everything on the board. And I'm like, oh my God, thank God I wrote everything down. I had a diagram of where everything was set just in case anything happened. Because I didn't have the luxury of having a lot of time to remix the show before the show started. And we had music, we had, 4 people in the show. So you've got, your mics and panning and all that. It was really interesting. So yeah, those things are detrimental. But nowadays you just lock up, you have your board, you set it, you get the sound, you save that as a preset, and then you just pull it up whenever the band's going to start recording again. It's so much easier now, but I think we've lost a lot of personality in today's music for that. And like you said, Simon, just making it perfect, having to take everything and put it right on the one instead of, a 1 and an 18th or, just a millimeter over or something. And I feel like we've lost that human quality to music.
Yes, definitely. And I'm a big admirer of Sam Phillips from Sun Records, and one of his sayings is perfect imperfection. And yeah, that's where I'm batting,
I always go back to the example of Space Truck. And if you listen to the very beginning of Space Truck, and they are not all exactly on the beat together. There is a little bit of variance. And every time I hear that, I smile because nobody fixed it. Nobody went in and said, we have to do this again. It's not perfect.
Yeah, it would never fly today because like dun 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 bram 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 bram. It's like you can hear where it's slightly off, but that's what's great. I was looking over here because I have booklets I had made from my old recordings that were on tape. And, it was like you said, there'd be like a diagram of all the faders and all the knobs, and you could write the little line at where you had the knob. But even that was not perfection. Like I could draw a little line, but you know how these dials are, especially on probably some of the cheap stuff I was using. You push that knob up or turn that dial. It's not exact. It's nothing lines up exactly. So you'd always get those little changes and things.
Well, plus your guitar player might not be set exactly the same as he was yesterday. He might have bumped the knob on the guitar or the amp. The drummer's mic might have moved slightly. I mean, there definitely are very human variances in those things. But I mean, that's really the best you can do as an engineer to try and keep things on some kind of reasonable track, is to at least find some element of consistency. And it's amazing, some of these albums that are recorded in 3 or 4 different studios in different parts of the world, and yet you get the album and you're like, this sounds like it's so cohesive and was recorded in one day.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like with all those diagrams and all those ways you put tape and draw little lines on the compressors and everything, it would have killed for the kind of precision you could have nowadays. And now you try to go back to that and try to make things like if I was doing something like that, I'd try not to work off of a template, because I could just easily just delete all the audio on my project and then just record my guitar into all the presets I had from the last song, and it would sound identical.
Yeah.
And you would have killed to be able to save things exactly the way they were, but you don't realize, or you didn't realize 30 years ago, the result would be something that could sound a little too perfect or even sterile.
Well, and then it's just going to get ruined with brick wall limiting anyway.
that too.
After all that work. All right, let's get back to our song. Okay, that was a lot of stuff going on. I don't know if Glenn was playing on 1 track or 2 tracks, because it seemed in the middle there like he was doing a little bit of a run on the bass, but keeping the rhythm. So I don't know. I mean, he's certainly good enough to probably do that. I'm not going to make judgments on that after our You Fool No One episode. I will never again say he probably didn't do that, because I was completely wrong on that. But it's definitely some interesting playing. What are you hearing, Simon?
I want to hear a 12-inch remix just on that bit, with Bob Clearmountain. Do you remember the 12-inch of Miss You that came out years ago? I could, that middle. I just want that middle section just to go on longer, really.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. It's a great groove for one. And then just Tommy, it's not like he's playing a solo over top of it, because we're not getting like a run of emotion or high pitched notes or anything. He's just playing almost like his own guitar rhythm on top of what John and Glenn are doing. And I mean, this is just ear candy for me. What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, I think it's one of it's without question the funkiest, 45 seconds of Deep Purple ever, maybe 45 seconds of the funkiest music ever, and just one of my favorite musical passages ever. It's just so good. And to Simon's point, you do want it to go on longer, but that's part of the brilliance of it, right? They could have made a whole song out of that, or made a 2-minute, 3-minute musical interlude, but the fact that it leaves you wanting more, like I can imagine hearing this for the first time and saying, wow, I already want to go rewind it and listen to that part again. Because, all Glenn does is the woo in the beginning, and then the little woo in the middle there. And his bass, I think what you're hearing is like, it might be a clavichord or something that's like melding with the bass. And then Glenn's doing this boom beep, boom beep, boom beep. These like really like disco note and octave things. And then Tommy, it sounds to me like he's doing that, and he's like double tracking that with some sort of harmony in it. But it's not particularly complicated, but it's just so. I mean, it's hard for me not to bob my head and dance when that's part's playing. It's so good.
Yeah, it definitely has a movement to it. And again, I think the shaker plays a big part on that. If it was just Ian Pace playing eighth notes on the hi-hat, it wouldn't move the way it does. And I think that when you've got a guitar part that's so fluid and flowing the way that is, really that shaker helps bring that out. Otherwise, you've just got motion from that one side, and then everyone else making more of a foundation than actual motion in the song. But yeah, it's such a great groove. I love the bass and the organ here. I mean, there's just nothing bad to say about this song. It's top song for me all the way through.
100%.
Yeah. Is there a vibra slap in there, Nate, as well?
You know what?
Oh, is there?
I do believe, now that you say that, I do believe there is. Let's just go back and hear that part again.
I feel like for me to miss a vibra slap, that's like a personal failing. So,
Well, I'm sure I heard it.
oh no, I believe you.
That's it, Nate. 10 sweet emotions instead of Hail Marys. You have to do sweet emotions.
Yeah, it's easy to lock in on one thing in this and miss, like you mentioned, the shaker, and it's like, yeah, I guess I kind of always knew it was there, but I never really thought about it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, let's listen to it again.
I'm pretty sure it comes in on a 1. I just can't remember exactly where it is, but let me find where we start here. So those that I'm hearing from Glenn, that's what I was talking about. That definitely sounds like it's bass.
Yeah, and he's like sliding up, beep, beep. He's sliding that lower note. And yeah, the vibra slap, I don't think I've ever noticed that before. And then I like that the shaker's just doing like a on the beginning of each one. It's starting like on the 4 and go and I never really noticed that before either. There's just so much cool, funky, very simple percussion in there that just makes it even better.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to this, and I like that too, because it's always too easy to just go with a shaker and just play through the whole song. But when you actually come up with a dynamic pattern to it, like we have here, and then you've got that, you've got a little bit of tambourine, you've got the vibra slap, which is, I mean, you could hear it, but it's not really up front either, but yeah, there's so many layers of things going on. And I love when a band takes the time to do that, when they put everything they can into a song to make it sound full and interesting. And, a lot of these things aren't necessarily meant to be heard specifically, but the blend of the sounds together is just magic.
Yeah. And I think doing it this way, you shouldn't be drawn to listening to the percussion, right? You should be focused on what else is going on. So it's just there to kind of flavor it. Like if you're cooking food, you don't put so much salt that people are like, oh my God, this is salty. You just put just enough so that it enhances the flavor and doesn't distract from anyone. Yeah, they're riding that fine line and really nailing it here.
Yeah, you creep in the room, you hit the vibra slap, you disappear out the door again until it's time. You don't be like, hey, I played a vibra slap. I want you to know. I think a lot of things in songs are meant to be felt more than they are specifically heard. And I think the percussion is a great example of that. It's really meant to be felt and experienced as part of the experience of the song, but not like, hey, look at what the percussion's doing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I wanted to ask you guys about, especially on this album, because this is really the only Deep Purple album that this happens, is the variety of percussion options that Ian Paice has in his toms, because he switched his kit to something very different from his normal setup on this album. And personally, I think it adds a lot of character to the album, that we get a lot more melodic choices in the percussion. What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, I never really thought about it, but what do you know, like what the big changes in his set were going into this one?
Oh yeah, if you look at the kit, normally he's just got the 1 rack tom and 2 floor toms, but here he's got like 3 really small toms. I think there's 2 extra toms underneath of that, and then the floor tom. So he's got some that are brighter and higher pitched than he normally would, as we're hearing here in this transition part, where we normally wouldn't hear these pitches coming from Ian Paice. that also can change the way that you play just because you have new toys available to you and just tempting you right in front of your face the whole time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What do you think, Simon?
I'm with you, Scott. I've never really thought about it too much. But the change in Pacey's drum kit, it just sounds awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, they're a little bit deader and drier because smaller drums don't ring out as much. So the smaller the drum, the higher the pitch, but the deader it gets too. Which you hit a 6-inch rack tom, and that sound is going to decay pretty quick. You hit an 18-inch floor tom, that thing's going to be booming out for 3 or 4 seconds. So it adds just a completely different percussion dynamic, which I've always enjoyed on this album. I honestly have no idea how many guitar tracks we're up to at this point. I feel like there's at least 5 or 6 going on. Tommy's really seems like he's enjoying this song. What do you think, Simon?
Yeah, it's in his wheelhouse. Absolutely. I mean, I was just thinking about Tommy's. I mean, sometimes when he plays a lead figure, he's answering himself, and then sometimes he'll double track himself. But it all melds together really well.
Yeah, I would agree. A lot of times you'll have a call and response or conversation between maybe the guitar and the keyboard or guitar and bass, but he just seems to be having his own thing going on where he's, it has kind of his own party within the song, within the layers of the guitar. It's really interesting the way that he records because he's so, I hate to use the term tight, but he's so tight the way that he plays his harmonies. I don't know how much he plans versus just plays something in the moment and then knows what he played and can play on top of it. Nate, you know a lot more about Tommy Bolin than I do. Do you have any insight on what his recording process was?
I don't really on the recording process. If I had to guess just from the Tommy Bolin that I've listened to over the years, it seems and I've played with people like this before, not necessarily at Tommy Bolin, not saying that they were at Tommy Bolin's level because he's like one of my favorites, but people that would just kind of lay something down and then say, oh, now what am I going to figure out to do on top of it? And it was just very unrehearsed, and you were just kind of making it up as you go along. And I just kind of got the impression that that's the way he was, not to cheapen what he was doing by any means, but I just kind of get he was just so talented that he'd be like, now I can put something down on top of it. Let's see what could I do? And then he remembers what he played and he probably matches it exactly. And then let me try playing it up a third. Let me try playing it, on a fifth or whatever, and see how it sounds with it. And say, yeah, I'm going to go with this.
Some people just have those mathematical musical abilities without even thinking about it. I mean, you think about somebody like Mozart who could just, sit down and write something that is ridiculous, or Beethoven.
Who just with staff paper, not even, needing an instrument. Yep.
But to come up with like harmonies and interesting parts and things that the performers go, I can't play that. What you're asking me to do is insane, that kind of thing. I think there's some people that just have these brilliant musical minds. And I don't know much about Tommy Bolin outside of Deep Purple, other than what, you guys have done on the Deep Purple podcast. But I will say, I do think he was one of those people that just had an amazingly brilliant musical mind and the talent to show what he was thinking and feeling to other people. Because some people might have that brain and not be able to show off what they've got going on physically. And I think he was the whole package. I really do.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever heard those. Michael Jackson did like demos of like him doing Beat It It's just vocally, and it sounds exactly like the song. It's him doing a track of, maybe beatboxing, and in a track of the bass line, and a track of this, and you're like, wow, he had that thing fully formed in his head before he even recorded it. And then there's people that just don't, they have an idea, but they kind of build it as they go along.
Yeah, or like when I have a great idea for a song and I record it into the voice memo on my phone, and I get home and it turns out absolutely nothing like the idea I had originally.
Yeah, or you're like, I know I heard something cool in my head when I recorded this voice memo, but I can't remember what it was. It sounds stupid now.
Exactly. What do you think of Tommy overall, Simon?
He could react if the music inspired him. He could react without it sounding too thought out. Basically, I mean, just choice of notes was impeccable. And just listen to this track. I mean, I could be doing sort of air Glenn Hughes bass in the kitchen, or I could be doing air Tommy. Those slides he does up to the top of the neck. It's just an instantaneous. It's a Mark IV thing essentially, and I don't even think Mark III had that looseness.
That's a good point.
I was thinking about that too. They've got that kind of. They sound very comfortable and very loose, which is funny because the song's getting tighter.
Right.
But it's like loose in a like. I think you can only be loose like this if you are able to be super tight. You know what I mean? It's like, there's playing behind the beat, and then there's playing in a way that sounds terrible. it's you're behind, but this is expert musicians that know how to do it and make it sound that way. Like, you could listen to 100 covers of the song, you're never going to hear something that has quite the same feel as this.
That's very true. And there's a few songs, and I don't know which episodes they were on, so I don't think they've all aired yet, but there's a few songs where I listened to it and I feel like the band was, you can imagine them in the studio recording the song, and they're just smiling at each other from ear to ear because they're having such a good time. And I feel like this is one of those songs where it just feels like they're all in this moment together. There's a unity, and I think that allows you a little freedom because you're just going to play what you feel in the moment instead of, oh, what was that thing I wanted to do, or how, what am I going to do next? You're just in the moment feeling it. And I think especially that middle section and the ending of the song is a great example of just being comfortable with the people you're playing with, trusting them, knowing they trust you, and just going wherever it takes you.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
I heard John Lord say in an interview that he felt he was almost an observer. He used to enjoy watching the rest of the band play the song, I mean, he's playing some awesome keyboards, but he just felt like like an observer, really.
Interesting. If this song had been written during Richie's time in the band, I have to wonder how this riff would have gone. If it would have been like da 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 da, a lot of trills in there, and something that would have been a little more Richie, because I think Richie could have done some cool things with this riff. But I really like the way that they arranged the song. I like that they didn't overplay the riff, that they didn't make it too complicated. It's a lot more accessible, I think, to the listener. And you just put it on, and 3 seconds in, you're smiling, you're tapping your foot, you're ready to take this song on.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why this album is often referred to as not being a Deep Purple album and all that, which I don't. Even though John Lord said it, I don't like that kind of implication. But, however, it is very much like Tommy Bolin's the band leader at this point. He's running the show. Yeah. He just came in. He wrote the majority of the songs on the album. He's all over this album. He And he did that in every band he was in. He did that in James Gang as well, where he just comes in and he was so prolific. And it's really like Tommy Bolin featuring Deep Purple. And yes, he only gets a few little lines of vocals, so it's not Tommy Bolin band, and you're still relying heavily on Coverdale and on Hughes. But musically and writing wise, this is essentially Tommy Bolin if he had the might of Deep Purple back behind him supporting him. So you get this very split reaction with this album for me, which is I love it, and it features a lot of the hallmarks of Deep Purple that I love about the band, but it also it just seems like Tommy Bolin is not in a bad way, but in complete control of where this project is headed.
Yeah, I don't know if it was on the Stormbringer episode or if it was an episode for this season, but I had played an interview with John Lord where he talked about that, where he said that Come Taste the Band wasn't a Deep Purple album. It was a Tommy and Glenn with 3 guys from Deep Purple supporting them. But in another interview that I heard with John Lord, he did say, and it was when they were working on the remaster version of it, he did say, this is a good Deep Purple album. He kind of, recanted on that. What are your thoughts, Simon, when somebody says that a band's album isn't a band's album?
I don't pay much attention to it. This is Mark IV Deep Purple. I've always loved the album from start to finish. And it says Deep Purple on the label.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I heard a lot of that when I was doing Uriah Heep, the Magician's podcast too, that, this isn't a Uriah Heep album. If the band released the album, if their name is on the album and it's those musicians on the album, I'll even be a little bit loose on that and look at bands like Kiss who hired people to play on some of their albums. If it's released under the band name and it's the band's songs, then it's the band's album. It could be a departure, it could be experimental, it could be something completely different. But if the band released it, it's the band's album.
Yes.
Exactly. And do you really want a band to go on for 50 plus years and try nothing new, nothing different? It's like, come on. I mean, you have to give. I mean, I would say the only thing about this album is that but it's not just this album, which is that Lord and Pace really took a step back and were just really more supporting. They have hardly any writing credits and are just kind of like support musicians. But as part of that band, they're lending that sound to it. You couldn't replace the drummer and keyboardist and have an album that sounds the same, so it's, yeah. And as Simon said, legally, this is a Deep Purple album. Nobody's sued them and said, you can't call that Deep Purple. We're not talking about the 1980 Deep Purple. We're talking about 1975 Deep Purple. Right. And it's, yeah, I think people waste too much time arguing about whether a band is a band when it's clearly is the band.
Yeah, exactly. But I would say songs like Drifter, I Need Love, that have some really interesting drum beats to them. I think Pacey did step forward on those songs and really create something interesting. John Lord, I don't know how they did the credits for this album, because it wasn't, Blackmore, Gill and Glover, Lord and Pace like it was during the first part of Mark II. I don't know how they broke it up, but I tend to think that everybody kind of put a little bit of their stamp on it, regardless of, how it looks statistically, because but I don't know, maybe John Lord said, hey, or maybe Tommy Bolin said, hey, John, on this song, why don't you play this? And I want you to do that. Or, he could have very much been in control of that. I honestly don't know. He could have come up with some of those beats that Ian plays. I couldn't tell you. But at the end of the day, I think we get a damn good album, one that I'm very, very happy to have in my collection. And glad I didn't have to literally taste the band. So we've got about 28 seconds of this song. We're in the middle of just a killer jam as they're going out. Let's check it out. Tommy is just going off. There's at least 3 guitar tracks on top of the rhythm that I'm hearing there based on the way they're coming in and out. And I mean, it really takes, like I said, it takes a pretty good musical mind to be able to layer that many things, make them sound good when you're just playing them on the fly like that, you know? So
the classic Tommy Bolin outro, "Don't Kill Me, Tommy Bolin." People, I know they don't like when I talk about his outros, but he's the best outro guy in the 70s, in my opinion, and just could always just bring such a dramatic element to end a song and make it interesting. And like the way he's doing here, just layering guitars, whatever it is. And I think, again, my personal guess is that he was just, I'll throw one more thing on. I'll throw another thing on. And maybe there were things he threw on that, I don't like that. Let's get rid of it. And, I think he just kind of, and honestly, it's similar to the way that I would record when I was in the studio, is just, let's try that. I'll put a keyboard track. I didn't like it. Let's try that, and then you reach a point where like, the song's probably done with the way it is now. And then you move on.
Yeah. I had a phrase that I used to say before I would say a song was done, which was, what else can I do? And then I would always know when I've gone too far, when I would add one thing and it started to muddy everything up. I'm like, okay, that was too far. And then I would delete that and go back to the last, the previous state of the song. And I would listen back and go, okay, I think that's right. It's like sometimes you don't know when you've crossed the line until you've crossed it.
The famous thing, I don't know if it's about music or movies or whatever, the famous expression, an album's never finished, it's abandoned. Because you just reach a point where you're like, you have to move on, right? You've got deadlines, you've got to get this delivered, and you say, well, we're done with it now. And some of the greatest masterpieces ever recorded would probably have, they could have probably stayed in the studio for another 6 months trying this and that, but at a certain point you just have to say, it's done, I'm moving on. And we look at it like, oh my God, this is an amazing masterpiece. Right. And the people that recorded are like, I would have changed that, I would have done this, I would have added that. But that's the creative process for you.
And you mentioned earlier, Nate, the idea of a band not growing and expanding. I mean, think about Deep Purple, the way they started. If they hadn't grown and expanded in different directions, we would have had 25 albums that had 2 Beatles covers on every album. And
yes, exactly.
At some point it's gotta change. Simon, what are your thoughts on the ending of the song?
The ending, the fade is fantastic, and I just pick the needle up and want to play it again, basically, which is what it's all about, isn't it? I mean, on the remixers, obviously you get. Tommy went on and on and on, and it's great. But we're just listening to the remaster here, and I just want to listen to it all again, and I shall do.
Now I haven't heard.
It's much like the it's much like that little interlude piece, right? It's like it leaves you wanting more. And as Simon said, on the remix, you get almost an extra minute of outro there, which is not a bad thing. But the masters of leaving you wanting more. This song, and for a Deep Purple song, 3.5 minutes is really short. So it's hard to not look for more after that.
Yeah, it's interesting because some songs that are 5 and 6 minutes, you would think, wow, they could have trimmed that down a little bit, and I'm thinking they could have trimmed something else down, added another minute to this, and I'd probably still want more. It's such an enjoyable song. I don't think no matter what they gave me would have been enough.
Agreed.
But I haven't heard the remaster. Does this song have a definitive end, or do they still fade it out after just a longer jam?
I think Glenn Hughes's vocals are just on a loop. He just seems getting tired of getting tighter, and it just gets a bit tedious. Really, you just wish when they'd done the remix that they'd faded Glenn's voice out, and I just wanted to hear Tommy just play and play and play, and the band grooving. But anyway, that's for another box set, eh?
Yeah, I'm sure coming in 2052. But yeah, that's an excellent point. I think that would be the one repetitive thing that would wear out a little bit. But I did like that thing that they added, that getting tighter, that that they put into the last section there. That was a really nice surprise, even showing that they're always evolving in a song. They're not a band that's like, well, this is how you play this part, so we'll just play it. We'll put a solo on top of it. They're even evolving the rhythms underneath of it through the fade. And I love when bands put that much effort into a song to keep it constantly fresh.
Yes, you mentioned that before, Scott, with Ian Pace, where he just keeps bringing more as the song progresses. Really, it just carries you along, and it's what makes him a genius.
I absolutely agree with that. And then just the whole rhythm of the song. I mean, it's like when your body's moving, and I don't dance or anything like that, but I will tap my foot. I'm a drummer. I'll drum on my knees or whatever. And the tempo and the rhythm, the movement of the song is so much that when I'm done listening to it, my fingers are like, hey, do something. You got to find something else really quick because I'm in a mode here, and it just fills you with such great energy. This to me is the idea of what music is all about. Yes, you need your ballads. Yes, you need your, aggressive songs or whatever. But for me, the best wheelhouse song for me would be something like this, something that just makes me happy, something that makes me want to be physically active, something that as soon as it's over, I'm like, I want more of that. Like that to me is the greatest songwriting and performance I could ever ask for.
Yes, I agree entirely.
And it's this gem of the mid 70s that hardly anyone knows.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, this to me is surprising. Like, this could have been, a huge single. But I don't think it was even released as a single, if I'm
Do you believe
or maybe it was in like Holland or something, but
I think I have a copy of it on Purple Records. I just want to see what I'm just going to look it up and see if it was the A side or the B side. I think it was the B side. Just something.
Oh, it was. It was released in the U.S. February '76.
There you go.
I stand corrected, but clearly it didn't go anywhere. It would not have.
Yeah.
It's there's chart positions here for it.
So
the U.S. Billboard hit 43 on the Billboard 200. That's pretty surprising.
That's not too bad. I've got a 45 of You Keep On Moving and Getting Tighter's the B side. So when they're ranking those, I don't know how they rank that, because you've got two songs that you're really judging. You don't really know what song people are buying a 45 for. It could just as easily be a B side as much as an A side, but that's the only version of it I have on 45 is with You Keep On Moving.
Yeah, I see that it was released as a single in the US and that You Keep On Moving was released as a single in the UK. But maybe they flip-flopped the B-sides for both of them for the countries. I don't know.
That could be. Yeah. Well, also, I'm only looking at Purple Records because those are the only 45s I'm collecting. So you've also got, Warner Brothers release, whoever else might have had rights or, tapped into, because who's not going to tap into trying to get their hands on some money for a Deep Purple album if they can.
Yeah. Well, apparently when they was doing the promotion for the album, the band used to turn up to these places, and sometimes Tommy's team, his record label, they'd have a bigger presence than the Purple promotion, and that caused like a bit of friction in the band, apparently.
Oh wow!
Oh wow!
And and also Glenn mentions at Long Beach after he does Getting Tighter with. That he says it's out as a single. Words to the effect, if you can find it. So maybe they had some distribution problems with it.
Oh yeah. A lot of times it could be one of two things. Either somebody's fighting over the legal side of things, in other words, like what percentage of the profit you're going to get if you do it on your label or that sort of thing. And then the other is how backed up the pressing plants are. And I mean, to look at a more extreme thing, looking at COVID, when record plants weren't pressing anything, people were still writing and recording music during that time. So now when the pressing plants start slowly opening up, the backlog was tremendous. And it was the same with book publishers and everybody else, that you depend on physical people to be in there in mediums where people are still creating content, regardless of the shutdown. And now you're like, okay, we're back in business. Oh shit, look at how much work we have ahead of us, And with record, I mean, you can only press them so fast. In fact, wasn't that why Whoosh was delayed? Was because of the COVID pressing?
Yeah, it was supposed to come out in like June or something and end up coming out in August, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but that's interesting, Simon. I did not know that. It doesn't surprise me though, because like I said, everybody that can get a piece of the pie is going to want to try and get a piece of the pie. So you've got EMI, you've got Warner Brothers, you've got Purple Records, you've got RCA or whoever else might have been, or even some obscure smaller companies that I've seen releases on. Everybody's going to try and get a piece of that. So yeah, I'm sure there were a lot of legal issues there, a lot of arguments and lawyers and God knows what else.
Yeah.
But if that causes dissension in the band because somebody's trying to promote it, that's kind of weird to me, because anybody promoting your music should make you happy.
Yeah, and maybe it was over-egged in the books, by the fans. I'm sure it was just a brief moment of feeling uncomfortable. But I think Tommy's manager was is it Barry?
Very Fay.
Yeah, he was quite an on the front foot sort of character, should we say? And and Tommy was promoting Teaser at the same time. That was part of his signing on deal, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So, but see, now that's a good idea, because if you're tying in one thing, if people are interested in Purple and you're saying, hey, there's this new single you can check out, you can get more of us. By the way, I've also got a solo album coming. If you could tie that into another release while you're at the record store picking up this 45, you should grab a copy of Teaser. Those tie-ins are
brilliant.
Yeah, really
introducing him to a whole new group of people too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and did I tell you I was in the James Gang? Certainly a fantastic musician. Very obviously lost too soon, but it's amazing how much of a catalog that he actually had at such a young age. I mean, he certainly was not shy of working and being part of things, and that's something that I really appreciate. I can't imagine what his catalog would look like had he still been with us. I mean, I think about even taking 10 years off, how much Glenn has produced. I imagine Tommy would have been much the same, because I don't think he would be one to want to sit idle. I'm a guitarist. I want to play. I want to be playing all the time. Who's got an open slot? Who needs somebody to fill in? I just see him as being one of those people that wants to just be constantly playing.
Yes, he was on a roll, really, wasn't he? Right from Spectrum. Mm-hmm. I suppose that's when he came into everyone's consciousness. David Coverdale said, you got to listen to this guy. Mm-hmm. And that opened so many doors for him, really.
Yeah.
It's all been said and done, really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, once you're in one of the biggest bands in the world, I mean, people are going to take notice of you, and especially back then, because now I feel like it wouldn't be that big of a deal, because we have so many big artists and so much history. But back in the 70s, to get the gig, that was a huge deal. I mean, obviously some bands like, Robert Trujillo getting the bass gig for Metallica, that's a big deal because it's Metallica. But in general, I don't think there's that many bands today that, somebody joins, it's like, oh, okay, I guess they're in that band now. And I just feel like there's no real stakes or momentum in music these days like there was back in this age. What do you think, Simon?
Yeah, the business has changed so much.
It's oversaturated to me, and I hear about bands breaking up. I'm like, I didn't even know they existed, so I'll be okay with it.
I've seen a lot of bands recently like make headlines like, this band said, this thing about their fans, and or like, this unbelievable 90s rock band, legendary band, is like calling it quits, and I've never even heard of the band.
Yeah. I hear so much about Green Day, and I still don't think I know a single Green Day song.
At least I've heard of Green Day. It's maybe not my thing, but like, okay, I get it. But it'll be like, it just happened yesterday. I'd have already like completely lost the band from my mind, but it was just like, what? They were a big band in the 90s. I was an adult in the 90s. I do not remember this band.
Mm-hmm. Well, Simon, I mean, we're all older guys. How much do you pay attention to current music versus just kind of sticking with the comfort food?
I'm a comfort food guy, really. okay, it's nice when you hear something new, um, but I'm 62 now, so I've been playing so much of I've got so much music to listen to, which I haven't listened to for years. I go into the garage and find my CDs and I bring in the pile, and then suddenly the lounge is looking like a bomb site, and I've got to move them all out again. And I mean, Tommy's audition was legendary. I mean, he just walking in, he made an impression. The way he looked, the way he dressed, and as Glenn Hughes said, the way he sort of dipped his shoulder before he played a note. I mean, he knew before he played he was going to be the man. Yeah. He just walked it and talked it.
Yeah, not a lot of guys in 75 had painted hair and nails and things like that. The only, I mean, outside of bands that were, like Kiss, which was their gimmick, I'm thinking John Lawton was a very visibly interesting guy, the way he dressed, but a lot of glitter on his face and that sort of thing. I don't really know of anybody else that that would have had the I guess the stones to walk into an audition like that. That's a really interesting way to introduce yourself to people and say, "Hey, I want to work with you."
Yes, I mean I think Tommy walked in with some amazing looking woman as well, and that caught John Law's attention, and it was a moment in time, and I wish Tommy was still with us.
Yeah. I remember John saying something about a cotton knit dress that didn't leave much to the imagination. Is the way he phrased it.
I think he was referring to Karen, his longtime girlfriend, and later Glenn's wife.
Of course, yeah. Yeah. Boy, there's no nepotism in this band. Well, thank you guys so much. As we wrap up, any final thoughts on the song, Nate?
A great track. While I would play it for somebody to find a new appreciation for the various different eras of Deep Purple, but I wouldn't play it for someone to say, "Oh, if you like this, you're going to love Deep Purple," because it would either be they'd hate it, but they could love Deep Purple, or they'd love this and they'd hate Deep Purple. Because it's not a typical song of theirs by any means, if there is an overall typical Deep Purple sound. But just an overall great forgotten 70s track that to me is one of my favorites from their catalog.
Well, I think you've hit something, though. I think the diversity of the band's sound overall throughout the different generations and different players has varied so much. I mean, this is still the same band that did Mandrake Root and did One More Rainy Day. And, it's got a few changes in the lineup, but it's still Deep Purple. And I think if you were to have to say, like, give me 5 songs to define this band, it would have to be some kind of wild variety pack. I don't think there's anything other than if you were to say current Deep Purple, like last 4 or 5 albums, you could say, okay, well, there's mostly hard rock here. I think we can find like a more general sound that they're going with. But I mean, you look from In Rock to Fireball to Machine Head to Who Do We Think We Are? You've got 4 completely different albums, and then Burn and Stormbringer and Come Taste the Band. I don't think they had a specific sound. I don't even know if hard rock actually defines the band, because they did so much that was outside of that scope. So yeah, it would be a real challenge to do that. But yeah, banger of a song. Simon, what are your thoughts?
I think it's a song you can play to people who don't listen to Purple. You can sneak it in and say, what do you think of this? Oh, that's great. Who's that? And when you tell them who it is, they're pleasantly surprised, like a lot of people. I mean, I've seen people react at work to it, and especially when that funky middle section comes in and they start involuntarily moving, it's great. It's great to see people enjoying the track without the baggage. Am I supposed to be enjoying this because it's Deep Purple? People just react to it.
Yeah, there's definitely those connotations, right? Where if you tell somebody who they're listening to first, they might smile or they might cringe. And I'll be honest, I'm not beyond that. If you were to say, hey, I want to play a Kiss song for you, John Mottola, I might go, okay. Because I'm just not a big fan of their sound. If you were to say I'm going to play a Van Halen song for you, I'd be like, I don't really need to hear that. But yeah, it does. There is something to be said for that for sure. And I think, though, there's just something about this sound that if you're a fan of music, if you're a fan of rock and roll of any kind, I think you're going to get sucked into this one pretty quickly. So before we wrap up, though, I just thought of something. Is this the only song that has a vibroslap in it from Deep Purple? I was thinking that Mandrake Root did at the beginning, but I don't think it does. I just think it has like that mosquito buzz sound. I don't think that it actually has a vibroslap. Can either of you guys think of one?
Yeah. Pace Ashen Lord, Ghost Story. There's a funky section in the middle. I'm sure there's a vibroslap in that one.
But within the Deep Purple releases itself, is there another one?
No.
I think what happened most likely is there was just one sitting around the studio and somebody just grabbed it and hit it and went, yeah, that was cool. And then they hit it again and then they put it down and walked away. I think a lot of things happen just because of things that are around you and available that you go, hey, let's try this and see what we can do with it. A lot of experimental stuff.
I think there might be one on Bananas somewhere.
Okay.
I've got your number, maybe.
Possibly. All right. I'll find out when I get there.
So yes, remember this moment.
Yes.
But suffice it to say, there's not a ton of vibroslap in the catalog.
Not a lot of vibroslap within Deep Purple, no.
Not so much that they needed to get a sixth member just to handle vibroslap responsibilities.
Yeah, Candace Knight just comes out on stage and she just like hits that and then walks away. I would go for that. That'd be fun. Yeah, it's an interesting instrument to use, but I think it's one of those things that the sound is so specific that there's only so much you can do with it without it just sounding repetitive. And, I think even hitting it twice in a song can be a little bit risky, but I think because they just did that and nothing else, I think it's great. If they would have hit it a third time, I would have said, that sound is kind of getting a little stale. So if you use it to taste, I think it has its place.
My rule of thumb when I was running the studio was one song per album max, unless you're the band Cake, in which case they have it in almost every song. But it's there's always an exception that proves the rule, and they are the exception with that one.
Sure. I mean, if you're making
somehow they make it work for them.
If you make a rhythm out of it and turn it into like a rhythmic instrument, if you were to use it, for example, somehow like a shaker or something like that, where it was part of the rhythm, that's one thing. But to just like come in and hit it, the sound is so specific, and then to like just keep hitting it would be obnoxious.
Yep.
Unless you're Cake.
Still might be obnoxious, but they make it work.
There you go. Well, thank you, gentlemen, so much for coming on the show. It was great having you. I appreciate your patience with the scheduling while we got all this together. I know that's always a bit of a challenge, and we made it work. So thank you guys very much. Come back and see us on another episode. That will wrap up our show today. I don't even know what day of the week this will air. It is Tuesday. Yep, it is Tuesday. So tomorrow is Haskincast Podcast Day. Check that out. And then we'll be back on Thursday covering this album. We'll be hitting the song Dealer, which is a whole different emotion and vibe for this album. And we get a little more David Coverdale back, which we had none of to speak of today. So thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks for listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast, a tour of the entire Deep Purple studio recordings. Please remember to give the show a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Leave a comment and tell your friends. I also have a Patreon set up if you'd like to support the show. You can also write to me at smokeonthepodcast@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and thanks for listening.